first wanted to welcome you all to UNCA Asheville and to our City Council Forum as a part of Constitution Week being hosted by Asheville Student Union. I want to thank you all of the candidates for coming. I really appreciate it. We're going to dive right in, but first I wanted to offer some thank yous because I did put this event on alone. So thank you to Bill Jackson, Rachel Maynard, the president of Poli Sci Club, the Chancellor's Office, as well as Communications and Marketing for helping advertise and plan this event. So the format of the event, for the first hour or so, we'll have the City Council candidates. I will pose the question. Each of you will have the opportunity to answer it. Since there are so many of you, we only have about 3 or 4 questions. So the questions were pre-prepared from students, faculty, and staff here, as well as from community members. And we just saw where the questions overlapped, and those were the ones that we decided to ask. I do believe that some of the candidates may be sticking around at the end. So if you have a question that goes unanswered, maybe you can catch one of them at the end. So like I said, for the first hour will be our City Council candidates. We'll have a short break in the middle, and then we'll bring up our mayoral candidates. Our timekeeper, which is Hannah, right here. So she has 2 cards, and the reason she's sitting here is so that you all can see her as well. So each question will have a certain time limit, so probably about 2 minutes, and she will be letting you know when you have 30 seconds and when time is up. All right, so we will dive right in. For this first question, could you please provide us with your name and the reason that you're running for City Council? And I think we will start down at the end with him and come down. Oh, and try to keep this response to about 30 seconds.
My name is Kim Rowdy. I'm a piano teacher, service industry worker, and activist. And I'm running because Asheville's at a critical turning point. We need courageous leaders as brave as the people of Asheville if we're going to address affordability in a meaningful way, if we're going to put the people's voice in front of decision-making around development, childcare, and education, and environmental issues, and if we're going to address racial equity and social justice as we address the budget, police funds use, city grant funding, environmental policy, and more.
My name is Andrew Fletcher. The reason I'm running is because Asheville needs more people to step up, and so I looked within myself, and I said that I would step up and take a shot at trying to lead this great city that I've come to love the last 10 years that I've lived here. I'm a professional musician, is what I do. Doing that means that my feet are in the trenches of the tourism industry, and I understand the tourism industry from an angle that I don't often see talked about in the political debate as somebody who works directly for tourism and sees the good and the bad that it's done for many people here. Creating, when we lose our culture to invest in new tourism, in new tourism-based economy, we're not actually putting our future first. We're turning the short buck and losing the long dollar. So if we need to maintain our culture, we maintain our culture here, the arts and music that makes this place people like to visit, then we'll have a longer run of this tourist economy that's been going on.
I'm Gwen Whistler. I'm looking to get my 2nd term on City Council. For the past 4 years, I've been working for a safe, vibrant, healthy, and accessible Asheville. I'm proud of the work that we've done in the past 4 years, and I hope to continue that work. We still have a lot of work to do, but I think we're making some great progress.
Thank you. My name is Dee Williams. There we are. I'm running for Asheville City Council simply because this is an inflection point in the city. There's a tale of two cities. We've got people who live really well, and then we have a divide with some other people of color, and poor people who do not live so well. I am unique in that I am the only candidate that is ever is in the process right now of setting up a land trust funded by Bunker County for permanently affordable housing. And also, I'm the only candidate that has ever gotten a concession for a living wage out of Mission Health. Those are over 10,000 jobs. That was in 2016. And I also got them to remove the box Mission Health on their job applications, which is a barrier to most folks' employment. I'm a business person, a former highway, roadway, concrete construction contractor. I was born here in this city. I'm a native. And basically grew up with as an orphan. And if I made it, I am willing and able to show other people how to make it. And I love the people. I don't want anything out of anybody. I pay for everything else that I want or need. And so it's my time now to help people and to fight for them.
My name is Pratik Bhakta, and I am a hotelier. I know the hotel industry has gotten a bad rap in media recently, but I am part of the hotel industry in tourism. As a business owner, I want to make sure that there's fiscal responsibility within the city and the city budgets. As a business owner, I know that we have to look at the revenues coming in and the expenses going out, and if one exceeds the other, then we're doing something wrong. So I want to make it affordable because money is where it matters the most with the city, where the spend is, and I think I bring a lot to the table when it comes to business. So that's the reason I'm running.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Goldstein. I've been in Asheville for 19 years. I live in Haw Creek. I've got 4 sons that go to the Asheville City Schools. My wife is a native. She grew up in Fairview, and she's an attorney at the Van Winkle Law Firm. Quite simply, I'm running to help preserve and protect our quality of life. The very reason why we moved here. And I think I've got, there's 3 things about me that I would like to see on council: 3 skills or an experience. One, I'm a small business owner. I came here with no job and created a job here in Asheville. And I think it would be useful to have someone on council who's done that in Asheville. Secondly, I've spent the last 23 years working with small businesses and developers, housing developers, and helping them navigate the laws and the process of opening and expanding and getting built. And I think it would be useful in this time of growth where people are coming here to have that skill on council. And finally, I'm the only one that I don't think there's anybody on council that served in the Planning and Zoning Commission. I've spent 6 years in the commission, the last 4 as its chair, and have an intimate understanding of our laws and rules and how they affect what happens here. And that's why I'm running.
Hi, I'm Cecil Bothwell. I'm running for my 3rd term on council. The thing that drives me the most in my life broadly is climate change. We really need to address that at every turn. I've been on board with that since 1979 when I first went off the grid with solar power. I had recognized the problem, and I bring that consciousness to every decision I make on council, whether it is moving toward more efficient vehicles. We had the first totally electric cop car in the country after New York City because of pushes I made. I pushed for the big blue recycling, the single stream recycling. I've pushed for replacing all of our streetlights with LEDs. That's saving us $365,000 a year in electric bills. That's coal that is not being burned at Lake Julian. I'm pushing as chair of the Public Safety Committee for more efficient cop cars. Our cop cars are only getting 16.5 miles per gallon right now. Way worse than my 20-year-old pickup truck. And I'm working on that. Next year, we're going to look at 36 mile per gallon cop cars. Those are all changes we can make to do things better. As far as affordability goes, affordable living is a really important piece, and City Council has tried desperately hard. In In fact, we've been told by Chapel Hill, University of Chapel Hill did a study and said that Asheville is doing the best of any city in the state on affordable housing, and yet it's not enough. And so what I think we need to do is turn our attention toward transit, because free, fair transit beyond the city limits would really help a lot of people to live more affordably. Affordable living has moved beyond city limits because of changes in the economy. And so we need to help those people get to work to reduce their commute costs, to reduce their parking costs, to reduce the parking demand, to reduce their carbon footprint. We can do all those things as a city. I've learned in my years on city council that you can promise a whole lot of stuff, but you can't necessarily do it. And I don't promise anything that I don't have a plan to achieve. And I'll continue to do that if I'm reelected, and I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is VJ Kapoor. I'm also running for city council. I'm a former attorney. I have a small business that does economic analysis for cities. And I'm also a UNC Asheville Foundation board member. That's not the board that got rid of the law clinic, UNC Chapel Hill. That's the one here that raises money for students and for this university. I'm running because I want to ensure that every resident goes to sleep each night feeling safe, fed, healthy, and valued. I'm a father. I've got a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. And those words, those aren't just words for me. The 3 areas that I'm focusing on, first is I think City Council needs to be laser focused on the needs of its residents and its neighborhoods. Second, I think we need to be dealing much better with development and growth. And third, and probably most important to a lot of you all here, is I think we need to diversify our local economy so that we are not so heavily dependent on real estate and tourism. I moved back here because this is where I wanted to raise my kids. I would like them, if they have a choice, to stay here after that. But I'm very concerned that we don't have good, solid-paying jobs that will keep them. And I hope many of you who are in college right now consider staying in Asheville. We need you. We need your intellect, and we need your spirit. And it's up to us and this community, I think, to work very hard to try and diversify our local economy, in particular, looking at green jobs and jobs that address climate change. So I ask for your vote. My name again is VJ Kapoor. Thank you.
So good evening. I'm Adrian Basallo, and I actually moved here 12 years ago to take my job as a CPA with Dixon Hughes Goodman, an accounting firm that was actually founded here in Asheville. When I first got here, I started getting involved right away. I've held leadership positions with the Asheville Downtown Association. I've chaired Downtown Commission. I volunteered with Edwin and Elida and Mana. I'm currently board treasurer for LEAF. I was board treasurer for WCQS, now BPR, during the recession, which was not an easy job. I've helped chair campaigns for the United Way and have been involved with my church, Trinity Episcopal Downtown. So I've always been involved in the community working on projects. In fact, one of the first projects I did was back in 2008, right here near UNCA. When I moved here in 2004, there was no sidewalk along Edgewood. And when my oldest daughter, Frida, was born, we were pushing her in a stroller in the middle of Edgewood. And the thing is that was unacceptable. So I identified a problem, and I worked with the city to lobby the Jackson Park Neighborhood Association. We actually met at the Center for Creative Retirement and got a partnership between UNCA and the city to put that sidewalk in so people could be safe. And that's one of the focuses I'm going to have on council, is getting back to basics, making sure that our streets and sidewalks are maintained, making sure that we're planning for the growth that we already have and the maintenance of our infrastructure going forward. And so I'm prepared to take my skill set and my experience to council and serve you. Thank you.
Hey, good evening. My name is Shanita Smith. I'm a 4th generation native of Asheville. In 1996, I graduated from Asheville High, and like most young people, we leave Asheville to pursue education and career, and also family. But I returned to Asheville in 2011, and I noticed that the growth and expansion of Asheville had lifted our profile, where we were recognized as an economic leader in Western North Carolina, one of the richest cities in Western North Carolina, but our community development had been misdirected where a lot of our social institutions have been extremely depressed. And one of the family institution, for one, is where I like to put my focus. I'm in the community daily. I work at Green Opportunities. We provide job training to people who are unemployed and underemployed. And I also spearheaded an initiative called Date My City to lift the cultural profile of African Americans in this city. And while this message was going on and working in Green Opportunities, it placed me in the community daily. And I know that the most vulnerable people in this community are the people in our community, in our neighborhoods. So with community development, I like to focus on community development around job creation, neighborhood revitalization, getting paid living wage jobs, and also home ownership. And again, I'm a 4th generation native of the city. I love Asheville, and I'm here for the long run. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out. My name is Rich Lee. I am a 20-year resident. I'm a Western Carolina Catamount. I am a parent, and I'm an advocate for healthy neighborhoods. I'm also a financial advisor and a fiduciary with a socially responsible investment practice. As far as I know, I'm the only city council candidate who is legally required to avoid conflicts of interest and not waste people's money. That could be useful. I'm running to advance issues that I've been working on for years. Making Asheville a safe and easy place to get around, keeping the feel of a genuine, authentic, artistic, working small town full of unique, eclectic neighborhoods and people, and protecting the diversity of Asheville's population from gentrification and from the problems of being a tourism-based economy. I sit on the city's Multimodal Transportation Commission and Greenway Committee. I am a past board member of Bountiful Cities Project, creating community gardens in underserved areas. I'm on Just Economics, a Policy Advocacy Committee, and a bunch of other local efforts. And I'm excited to bring what I know to decisions on City Council. I hope I'll have your vote. Thank you.
My name is Jan Howard Kubanek. I'm 30-year resident of the Kenilworth community. I served as past president and board member multiple times on the Kenilworth Residents Association in the Wayback Machine. I also was a formative member of the Coalition of Asheville Neighborhoods and the newsletter editor there, a retired school teacher who did some work with the city school system here, and then did civic involvement work and volunteer work, guardian ad litem in the court system for children of abuse and neglect. I'm running for city council because from my perch on Bowcatcher Mountain, where I've been forever, I see a lot of problems coming down. Sustainable growth. I actually see the disparity between the rich and the poor, between Lee Walker Heights housing project among the poorest projects, and Bowcatcher Heights among the richest housing situations going on now under development. I'm also a person who very involved in historic preservation of buildings. I think my primary thought is what I could really add is I would like to look and see if all of our children are getting a free and appropriate education out of the public schools. I see that as the way out of embedded poverty that we have.
Awesome. Thank you guys for that. So this next question, and we'll start with you, Jan. Please keep in mind that we will now be starting with the time. So each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the questions unless stated otherwise. So this first topic, or this first question was one that both students here as well as community members found to be important. How can City Council help Asheville cope with both the severe lack of and the skyrocketing cost of housing? Yes.
This is where I differ somewhat with the others. What I see is a major problem here that we are actively courting real estate investment at high value properties You cannot have, for example, there was another $6 million transfer on Biltmore Avenue that is going to become $2 million condominiums. We cannot continue doing that and then talking about how are we going to create homes for affordable housing. You cannot have one next to the other. Something has to be done. I think we need to moderate the advertising and the marketing that always courts highest end, and need to make something that is sustainable for the community also, because we cannot continue to grow at the wealthy end exponentially and expect people to be able to live here.
So if your goal is to produce housing for every income level in the city of Asheville, and in every neighborhood in the city of Asheville, and I think it should be, then it's clear the housing market in Asheville is broken. We have a housing market that'll produce a $500,000 house on a 16th of an acre. And every set of rules that we change, whether it's reducing lot sizes or raising the heights of buildings, only turns to the benefit of people producing the highest end housing. I believe when markets fail, it is the responsibility of government to help bring them back into alignment. And that's what I'd like to do on city council. I think that the city needs to look hard at approaches that have been taken in other parts of the state, whether that is requiring buildings, commercial buildings on main corridors like Harris Teeter and Trader Joe's to include housing above them, whether that's using affordable housing funds to help finance people who want to build basement apartments or fit out garage apartments and rent them affordably, or whether that's to give tax breaks to the quarter of Asheville property owners who are small landlords who are struggling in many cases to offer reasonable rents to their tenants and being squeezed by rising taxes and fees. It's going to take an all-hands-on-deck approach. This is an issue I've studied a lot, and I look forward to bringing it to bear on council. But it's definitely clear that without an intervention from the city government, we are in dire straits here.
I think our housing policy right now will give lift to the correct housing policy, will give lift to a lot of things across the spectrum that we see going wrong in Asheville, especially with our achievement gap. For a while I've been saying that education policy equals positive and affordable housing policies. A lot of our children right now are really suffering as far as their education and being able to overcome a lot of personal issues, community issues, and family issues because of the place that they live. So I think we need to really focus on what has been done in other cities who have the same issue, because Asheville is not the only city that's dealing with affordability, but we are one of the leading cities because we hit a lot of charts around affordability and a lot of charts around just places to visit. And when people visit Asheville, then they convert into residents, which has a mal effect on how affordable the housing is. But I think we need to look at Chapel Hill around inclusionary zoning, and also we need to look at rent controls as well. There are a lot of options on the table. I think we're going to have to be very radical in our approach because a lot of people are suffering, and Buncombe County is a leader in childhood poverty.
So I think first and foremost, the community already spoke about how important this issue by passing the bond referendum. $25 million of that bond is dedicated to affordable housing solutions, of which those solutions are being created and will be directed by this next council. So your vote really does matter this cycle as to who will take that $25 million and put it to its highest and best use. And you've heard some solutions already. I can assure you that nobody has the magic answer to solving affordable housing. If they did, we would have already done it. So we need to look at a variety of solutions. One of the solutions that I favor is density bonuses. New urbanism is a theory that's in use throughout our country. People are constricting into urban cores. They're choosing to live where they can walk, where they can bike, where they can walk to their jobs. So the more that we can encourage developers to build bigger projects closer to our city core, the better we as a community can provide services to those residents, and the better everyone's quality of life will be. So that's what we should be focusing on. I also think that the city already has a great inventory of land. that we need to put to better use. There's no sense for our city to be land banking when they don't have a plan for it. And I think you're going to see some great projects come out of those, especially Charlotte Street Corridor has property right there that could be turned into an affordable housing project that we can have quite a few new residents in that could walk into their jobs. So that's what I would like to see on council.
Thanks, Adrian. Like a lot of the candidates have said, my perspective on this is that this clearly is an issue that is impacting cities nationwide. You can just read that in the literature. And as Adrian said here too, there is no silver bullet on this. My view on this is I think we really need to look at this like we look at many other issues, which is comprehensively. The question was with respect to housing, but I think the big question is how do we end up reducing the costs of living for a lot of folks? And housing is absolutely important. And I completely agree with working with developers and using our leverage right now. There's a lot of developers who want to build in the city. This is not 2008 and 2009 when we were really trying to incentivize that. We've got a set of rules that makes it like 2008 and 2009. And I think some developers understand that as well. So in my view, I think we need to be both incentivizing, but also using our leverage there with legally within the zoning laws. I think the second thing that we really want to be doing is focusing on transit as well and making sure that we get people around the city. I agree with Adrian. The idea about trying to make things more dense, particularly near the urban core, is very, very important. A lot of neighborhoods are concerned about that as you get further out, and I think we ought to be working with them because I think for a lot of neighborhoods, they're not quite understanding what does that mean. What kind of house can be put on there? And I think doing some outreach out there may be able to assuage some of the concerns. The final area that I think is important here as well when we think about housing is also wages. Because that, going back to my point earlier, we are so heavily dependent on real estate and tourism that we need to be investing in good paying jobs. And again, the more that we can either reduce the cost for folks around here or the ability that we can help people get more money, so to speak, is something that I think will address this issue. But we got to look at it comprehensively.
Thanks. I look at it from the position of having been in the trenches for the last 7 years, and we have tried really hard on City Council to address the affordable housing issues. But here's my take on it. I think a lot of people are fantasizing when they think that the city can actually make a big difference. What's happened is, following World War II, when we converted from building planes and tanks to building cars, and we had the GI Bill, there was a great influx of wealth to the middle class, and everybody who could afford to left the city. They fled to the suburbs, and that was considered a good idea. It was often called white flight because often it was the white people who left the downtown, and downtowns became impoverished. That's the reason that the Salvation Army and the Rescue Mission are downtown. The property was really cheap at one point. Since about the turn of the century, wealth has rediscovered cities. And it's been bidding up the price of downtown properties more and more and more. And for the city to try to spend money to outbid the market doesn't make any sense to me. We've been trying that, and it really doesn't make sense. We offer low interest loans. We offer a rebate or low cost on building permits and so forth, but we get a few units. And the truth is, Asheville has done better than any other city in the state, according to UNC Chapel Hill. And yet we see what's happened. What I think we need to do is divert city tax money. We can use the federal money that we get to go for affordability. We should use our city money to extend transit lines beyond the city limits because affordability has moved out to the margins. Affordable living is outside the city, and we need to make transit affordable, fare-free, and extensive out beyond the city limits so people can commute cheaply. That reduces their carbon footprint, it reduces their impact on parking, it makes their commuting cheaper. That's the best way we can address affordability. Thanks.
Thank you. A lot of things have been brought up here. So City Council has two major powers. First is how we spend our tax dollars. The second, and it's a profound power, is the control of our zoning laws. And I don't think we should be trying to put affordability somewhere else. I think we should be working on encouraging that growth in our urban core and protecting our surrounding neighborhoods and protecting our surrounding mountains. And I think that the response that we've had to the frustrations of the traffic and the lack of affordability, or this idea that, well, we need to make it harder for developers to build here, are actually contrary to what we want. We have a set of rules that were put in place to encourage development downtown. And a couple of years ago, the council tried to, made an attempt to politicize those rules, which actually is hurting our affordability issue. And there's two sides of it. You have the affordable housing issue, which I agree with Cecil, it's a drop in the bucket of what we're able to do, but I do think there are, offering incentives are important. But we have a supply problem. When I meet with affordable housing developers and I say, what is the single most important thing we could do to improve affordability? They look at me and say, supply, Jeremy. Asheville has a severe lack of housing diversity. 92% of the housing in Asheville are single-family homes. We don't have a diversity of housing. And I feel like if we actually create a set of rules that encourages development in our urban core, where you don't have to improve as much infrastructure for mixed-use development, we'll have all different types of housing, places for people to work, places for people to shop, and the tax revenue that's generated from that and that small footprint, we can use that to improve our infrastructure, improve our transit system, improve the frequency of busing. But the idea of pushing it elsewhere, I feel like people of all kinds can live together in our urban core.
Certainly one of the main topics of Asheville is affordable housing, and everybody's sensitive to it. I am too, but I'm going to offer something that people haven't really thought of, and that is short-term rentals. Being in the hospitality industry, we know that short-term rentals are an additional source for a lot of people to make money. But some of the same people who are complaining about affordable housing are the ones that are actually taking out long-term residents, which is more affordable, and for exchange for having short-term rentals and increasing their bottom line. So, I'm all for property owners' rights to be able to short-term rent their houses out, or even homestays. That I'm an advocate of. As long as we're okay with certain areas where if it's zoned for it, great. If it's not, we need to make sure we crack down on illegal short-term rentals, which is driving up the price for affordability in a lot of areas. So I think that's one of the reasons I'm running, is to make sure that as new developers or actually new people who actually buy houses, that's actually destroying neighborhoods in areas where I think that affordable housing, where low rents can take place. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, so I'm the only person that's at this table who is even working on a plan, a community land trust that is permanently affordable housing. We were funded by Buncombe County with the operations money, and we're working with Physical Legal and several other organizations in the South Side community. Let's back up a moment. Historically, during World War II, black neighborhoods were redlined and there was block busting going on. So all of that has to be taken into consideration. As well, the city does not have a repository of funds. In fact, we're pretty cash strapped. So if you put a transit system in place, you're going to have to put together a regional transportation board, couple that with adequate land use planning for the region, and then apply that to a special district tax, which is allowed by the General Assembly, for a multimodal transit system with bike lanes, greenways, and a good transit system. And looks like we need to work with Buncombe County and also maybe even Henderson County and the other members of the French Broad Metropolitan Planning Organization. Let me also say that unaffordability is driven by Asheville's abrogation of making sure that when hoteliers and other large box developments come in, that they pay a living wage. And the police power of this city is in zoning, and there's such a thing called a variance. that can be tied to a community benefits agreement. So a lot of times what will happen is that we need to fight more, we need to be more creative, and you need business people who understand how to read a financial statement and a balance sheet.
So one thing I don't agree with is pushing marginal, economically disadvantaged people out of the city. I don't think that that's the appropriate way to go. I think we need to look for solutions within the city limits. It's all well and good to, I do work on the Metropolitan Planning Organization Board. I have worked with many of our regional partners, but frankly, that's not within our control to tell the county what to do around transit. Yes, we absolutely need to be more creative, and I think we're working that way. One of the things that I really am focused on now is when our developers ask for deviations from our rules, that's when we have leverage. That's when we can say, okay, you're asking for this, how are you going to invest in Asheville? And I think council has to continue and sometimes buck up and actually ask for those investments. We, like Cecil said, we actually are making some pretty good, at least better progress than anybody else in the state. But there are also two sides of this equation. Affordable housing is not only the price of the house, but it's also wages. And so I think our economic development policies have to be consistent with that. And we have changed the rules so that if the city gives any incentive to businesses, every employee must be paid a living wage, and they don't get those incentives until they prove to us that they have done that. Thank you.
So when you talk about housing affordability in the city, if you own a home here already, you're sort of insulated from this. I'm a renter. I think I might be the only renter that's in front of you right now. So this comes home for me, literally. And it comes home for me when my bandmates don't get to live in the city limits anymore because their house was turned, they were evicted and their house was turned into an Airbnb. It hurts the people that make this city such a great place to live. It hurts the people in my community. This is going to sound counterintuitive, but banning whole house Airbnbs hasn't worked because when government bans things, they just create a black market. Look at the heroin epidemic, look at marijuana. When government bans things, they fail. When government regulates things, then we can come to an agreement and find a solution. I'd like to regulate whole house short-term rentals to a capped percentage of the market in each neighborhood. And those neighborhoods could be part of that dialogue and decide how many units in their neighborhood would want to be short-term rentals. That's the kind of talk about housing affordability that will make a difference, because no matter how many units you put up, if you build 500 units and then you get 500 black market Airbnbs, the city just spent a lot of money to be right at the status quo. And that's not good enough if we want to continue to be a place where people who make culture can afford to live, because culture is what drives our economy here as a tourism. You think it's the mountain through the beer, but when you talk to people who come here, they love the experience of meeting the people who make the art and make the music. And that's why I'm here. At this point, if I was asked to move out of the home I rented for 10 years, I likely would not be eligible to run for the city council because I couldn't live here. So we're at a real breaking point as far as the types of people that are about to leave here. And we need to get really serious about what this is going to be like. And the efforts for building affordable housing units, I would continue and support them, especially with the bond. But I want to get real pragmatic about living with Airbnb, because it's here to stay, and we got to do the right thing about it.
So as a service industry worker relying on stagnant, unreliable wages in a tourist-based economy, I am a homeowner, and I don't know how many of you that are homeowners got your property tax increase and had the immediate panic attack that I did, but the affordable housing bond just made my housing less affordable, and I'm not alone in that, and that's going to impact our renters too. And I'm especially concerned, considering what we just saw with the River Arts District, the RAD tip, that we're going to need courageous leaders who are going to keep a careful watch on how we spend those bonds funding. But I do think there's something else. I've been to all of the regional housing consortium meetings in the past couple of years. I've been going to the housing and community development meetings. I've been to every city council meeting since the beginning of January of 2015 because I covered those meetings for the AFM News Hour on 103.3 Asheville FM. I'm one of the founding members, including some people here in the room that helped us start that station. And I believe in government transparency, but I also believe in the will of the people and that y'all are calling right now for courageous leaders. So I'm suggesting that we follow suit with Chapel Hill, a city in our great state of North Carolina that on March 1st, 2011, made a decision that it was going to be inclusionary zoning. So we need to stand and say no to the development we don't want so we can say yes to the development we do want. Otherwise, we're going to be building affordable homes that we can't afford.
Awesome, thank you guys so much. So for this next question, we'll start with Kim and come back down. With racial tensions escalating on a national level, many students and community members are concerned with the placement and the existence of the Vance Monument. Where do you stand on this issue, and if elected, how will you address the citizen concerns on race relations?
I'm really glad that this question came up. So I think it's really important for us to acknowledge the historical content and the intent of white supremacy and the timing of when these monuments were put up all over the country. It's time for us to reconcile the hate and trauma that many of these statues cause. And we need to also focus our attention on dismantling structural and institutional racism around our policies, in our schools, in our workplaces, and within our criminal justice system. We need courageous leadership by our elected officials in Asheville to engage leadership among persons of color in our community, to engage with volunteers on the African American Heritage Commission, and to invite our leaders to speak to the long legacy of racism, not only in our city, but in our country. Recognizing my privilege as a white person, it is my job as a role as an ally to work with communities of color, allowing their perspectives and lived experiences to guide our work in dismantling not only the symbols of white supremacy and hate and oppression, but also the systems. That said, I support the removal of Confederate monuments in Asheville.
It's time for the Vance Monument to go. It should be relocated to his birthplace, where it could be suitably contextualized. I am not going to put together a plan from one person about what should go in that place. I think that the people in this room over here are the people that should help decide what we should do with literally the most honorable place in our entire city, the very crosshairs that of our city. And so what should go there? Well, historically there was a mermaid fountain, some other fun things that we've done with that space. We should do something fun and very Asheville with that space and not continue to honor the legacies of a racist and horrific past that reminds so many of our residents every time they walk by that perhaps, in fact, they are second-class citizens. And it is wrong to continue to do that. If this is the national moment that we get a chance to do this right now, let's take it. And I would be happy to bring the leadership to the city council to do that. I don't have a history of working in racial equity work. However, I do know that personally, I would, on city council, I would take very seriously when Black Lives Matter shows up with policy ideas. I would take them seriously. I trust that community to know what's best for them. And I don't want to say this is what I'm going to do for you. I would ask what can the city do for you, and go from there. And so that is how I would lead on that issue, as that's by listening.
Thank you. Yeah, the Confederate monuments cause a lot of pain to a lot of people, and I think this is the time to really look hard and to understand from all the citizens of Asheville, but primarily the people that the symbolism hurts, as to what the right thing to do with those monuments is, and I don't feel like I can't speak as a person of color, but that's who needs to be weighing in on this issue. There is institutional racism in Asheville. We know that, and I am right now in City Council is in process of developing a human relations commission, We have formed a Blue Ribbon Committee that is looking at what the mission and goals of that Human Relations Commission should be. And that's being done not by City Council, but it's being done by members of our community, getting their input. And then, so I hope that by the end of 2017, we have that Human Relations Commission formed, and then every decision that the city makes is made through a lens of equity.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the question. I'm going to take a different tact on that. There is not one person in this room or in this region that's done more Black economic development than I have. I got the first contract for an African American from the city of Asheville. I was the lead development coordinator for the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians as we ran their businesses and put the business plan together for Harris Cherokee Casino. So we've done some work, and we just got the first contract for a Black contractor, by the way, funded for that in Southside too, over in the River Arts District. So I can kind of speak to some of the things that, and make a pertinent argument. Let me say this, systemic racism, that statue is no more, and I'm a pragmatist. Most Black folks' problems are economic in nature. And so I don't focus a lot of my attention on shiny things and make you feel good stuff. What our problem is poverty. And the systemics of it need to be dealt with by those of us who know how to address it. Let me just say that I'm not into symbolism much anymore. You either do the thing or you don't. We've elected Black leadership that has not been responsive to the needs of the community. And that's our issue with having this leadership picked. And then we got the highest, the widest achievement gap for Black children anywhere in the state. And yet we're worried about a statue and not about that. So I'm happy to have this conversation, not into symbolism, into realism and real change. Thank you.
As a person of color, let me tell you my story. I came to America when I was 6 years old. I was treated just like everybody else in New Jersey. Then in '84, we moved down here. I started the 7th grade in a place called UNCA. And I went to school there. I was the only brown kid in a sea of white people. I thought I would be outcast. In the reverse happened. Everybody wanted to be my friend. I thought there was something wrong with those people. Because I was not used to that. Up north, it was really a lot more, they treated me like I was normal, but here they treated me special. And I don't know why, but I seriously thought something was wrong with them. Accepting a brown person, person of color. But, I've had a good experience. There were incidences in high school where, people called me Hispanic, and I didn't like it. It was disappointing. I persevered through it. College was much better. But going back to this Vance Monument thing, it's a symbol that we've put in our hearts. It's a symbol that was created, but up until about a couple months ago, it was a non-issue. And now we're making a big issue because it's related to something that's historical. And I think if we do that with everything that we come across, then we need to go back to the Native Americans and say, look, we're all wrong. We need to go back. Because when is it going to stop? When are we going to start naming things and everything to where it makes sense? How far are we going to go back and make issues of things that remind us of history? Whether it's wrong or right, it reminds us that it was wrong. And it's there because it's wrong. If you wipe it out, it's out of sight, out of mind. Nobody knows the history. Nobody's going to care to look up the history and see what was wrong. So when it comes to that, I don't think that it needs to be removed.
Yeah, to specifically in reference to the Vance Monument, I mean, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. That's an obelisk. I have no problem with repurposing it, rededicating it, renaming it, giving its true history. But I think as a community, and as in Asheville and across the country, we need to be very careful about trying to destroy all former, examples of hatred and atrocity, and because we need to be reminded of it, and we need to learn from it so we can change. And I'm adamantly opposed to any institutionalized racism and discrimination, and not being a person of color, I can't speak to that, but I can speak to a long history of bad things happening to my people, and I feel it's important that we need to learn from history.
There's really no country in the world that I'm aware of that allows monuments to traitors to their country to persist after wars. Adolf Hitler's death place, in fact, is a little tiny brass plaque in the sidewalk in Germany. That's the only identification of where he died. General Lee was a traitor to this country. He swore allegiance to the United States, and he was a traitor to the country. Vance was, after the war, made his living going around giving white supremacist speeches all across the South. I think the monument will come down. Will it come down now? I don't know if it'll come down now, but it will certainly go by. The world has changed. Sure, no one was really questioning Vance until lately, but no one, I think, was really aware of what an important symbol those Confederate monuments were to the white supremacists, to the neo-Nazis, to the KKK, who created a violent reaction in Charlottesville, and who are continuing to carry on protests and around the monuments. It matters to them, and that's a reason why they need to come down. So we can't do it right now. The state law prohibits us. We can't even rededicate it according to our state law. So I think it will come down eventually, and I think what you need to do is get out and vote for different people in Raleigh, because they are crushing the city of Asheville, and they are crushing the black population in this state. They are fighting against voter inclusion. They're trying to exclude people from voting. We need to change the state laws in this state, and I think eventually maybe we'll go back to the mermaid.
Thanks, Tim, for the question. And I want to make sure that I do the courtesy of answering it. Cecil's right in the sense that right now state law essentially prohibits Asheville City Council from removing them. I think that should be something that is a power that City Council should have. I think the law should be changed. But I think folks need to understand that. With respect to Confederate monuments, there are actually 3 in downtown Asheville. There's an obelisk to some Confederate soldiers outside the courthouse. There is a rock dedicated to Robert E. Lee in front of the Vance Monument. There's the Vance Monument itself. In my view, I'd like to see the small obelisk removed to a Civil War battlefield or a museum. I want to see the Robert E. Lee rock removed, and I'd like to see the Vance Monument rededicated to something else. In terms of kind of the larger question, about racism and about some of the concerns that many communities have here in Asheville, we could have an entire forum on this. What is very concerning to me, again, my family, like critiques, my dad's from India, my mom is from Poland. I grew up here and got mistaken for Hispanic, and my mom was often asked what country she adopted me from. And that's in a polite way. But to make sort of no bones about this, the issue between communities of color and the police having bad relations right now is a serious concern. I've worked with police officers across the country, dealing mostly in budget and compensation areas, and talked to some of those folks and asked them, okay, in cities where they had similar issues, what worked? And there's no magic bullet to this. What they said was getting patrol officers, not those who were at the command staff level, but patrol officers out of their cars and into the communities and meeting people was very important. So they got to know folks. In Philadelphia, there was a lot of recruitment for police officers in those communities as well. So I don't pretend to have any magic bullet on this, but we need to work harder and we need to do better on this issue.
Well, there's one thing I've learned on the campaign trail so far is that even though I have ideas and a platform, by being a potential leader for you in this community, you have to listen to the will of the people. And one of the things that we're getting ready to embark on is commandeering a human relations council. And that will happen hopefully before the end of the year. And I think their first project is going to be what should we do as a community around the Vance Monument and the other monuments in downtown. Whether it's removed or recontextualized, I think if that's all they do, then we have sorely missed an opportunity for our community to move forward. The Vance Monument is just a shiny object. The bigger issues are the systemic racism, are the programs that are not being supported. In my work in the community, I've worked with MANA and United Way. I know that 1 in 4 children is food insecure. And food insecure means that they show up at school hungry. Have you ever heard of hangry? When kids show up in 3rd and 4th grade and can't focus because they didn't have a breakfast, that's irresponsible for us to put them in that position. We need to be looking at our social programs that are lifting people out of poverty. We need to be supporting things that help children learn. And more importantly, we need to be looking at programs that give opportunities to those that have been disadvantaged for so long. We can't continue to say, just rise yourself up with your bootstraps when they don't even have a boot. We need to get out there and promote entrepreneurism in our socially challenged areas of the city. We need to be working at all levels, not just with kids, but with adults as well. You know, the city already has the City of Asheville Youth Leadership Academy that already has 10 years of graduates out there. These are kids that typically would not have gone on to college, and the majority of those kids are going on to college. We need to continue to look at programs like that that will lift people out of poverty. Thank you.
Race relations in America is again now mounting. We had 2 summers of a lot of police brutality where a lot of black men were fatally shot down in the streets. And then not too long ago, we had the gathering of several white males in territorial anger, knocking down the progress or potential progress of any economic and political power that blacks and other people of color can amass. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to dismantle all the vestiges of white supremacy. These Confederate monuments were erected during a time where there was black political and economic power after the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. And this was a tool of intimidation. So we are here again with the tools of intimidation are now emboldening people who have hatred on their hearts. So we can look at it as just a symbol, but we know that symbols, we wear them every day and they speak to us. And they represent things in our lives that give us power and give us the spirit to do what we do. And on one end, that can be things that pull down community or things that uplift community. So I'm going to say this to you. In 1967, Martin Luther King, his 4th and final book before his assassination, he asked himself this question. He asked America this question: where do we go from here? And that's what we need to think about. Where do we go from here? Chaos or our community? I don't believe that monument has a place in our central business district. I think it should be removed and put on Vance birthplace, where it can be celebrated, or either that memory can be a recollection that we can live those times again, because we see we're at a critical time as it pertains to race relations in America.
Let's talk about history. I mean, people say if the monuments are taken down, people will forget history. So let's talk about the history of these monuments. They didn't just spring up in the days after the Civil War. They were raised 50, 100 years later during the height of Jim Crow and the backlash to civil rights as a way of sending a message to black citizens who was in charge of the town. And whatever they symbolize to you, now they are clearly symbols to the KKK and neo-Nazis. And what message does having this obelisk in the middle of the town send today to a kid in detention or a black adult going to courthouse under its shadow? We could remove the monument tomorrow, and black residents would still be stopped by police more than white residents. They would still be more likely to sit in detention and jail. They would still be underrepresented as business owners and on city boards and commissions. So yeah, we can change or remove that monument, but we should not stop there. And if, for whatever sense of history or culture, you are in favor of keeping that monument there, then help us in the task of actually promoting real equity and equality in this city and see if that helps the problem. But I'm for taking it down. It has no place in the city today.
I don't know if I should lead off with the fact that I was a Black Panther bodyguard in the 60s. And yes, Indiana University was under attack by the KKK. And so we all just stood around Keith Parker. Nothing happened. Okay, the Vance Monument, to get on with the question. I don't think the monument has really done anything. I think we have. I looked up racism. I was trying to see why it became such a hot issue now, or why the monument needs to come down. So there is embedded racism, which in northern Indiana, if you saw my name, Cubeneck, I was the underclass. We did not have peoples of color. The Polacks were the, so it turns out that no one has come up with a solution for embedded racism. It's related to poverty. To overcome this, we need to do more than just take down the Vance Monument. We need public, personal input. We need nonprofits continuing with all of their programs. I think we need the Black church to continue stepping up. We need grant monies. We need commitments on a personal level from volunteer organizations. DSS, we need to follow their work, monitor their work. No one is going to say it. We have 9 public housing projects. I was going to go through the whole campaign without saying anything, where those were my children. Something has to be done to stop that institutional racism, have them grow up, and then whole families and generations of them grow up in poverty and continue that cycle. I wish I could make a high school education as cool as selling cocaine. If we could do that, we'd have something. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys so much. So this next question, we'll start with you, Jan, and the response time will actually be 1 minute. Okay. This will also be the final question before we take a short break and then shift into the mayoral candidates. So each candidate should get that for 1 minute for responses. All right, so what plans do you have to address the issues of homelessness in the city of Asheville?
Okay, homelessness is another one I looked up. So we had the city's initiative on ending, the 10-year initiative on ending homelessness. So I called around and went to the homeless shelters. And how's this going, guys? And I have a lot of homeless people on my mountain. How do we address that? That's another issue that has not been solved anywhere. So we have AHOPE, we have ABCCM, we have the Salvation Army, we have the Restoration Quarters, we have Trinity Hall. I think we've got to keep trying on every level. And I kind of wonder about allowing the homeless camps if they're monitored. I had a very large homeless camp until it was torn down for ultra high-end housing. It didn't really hurt anybody. That's my statement on that.
So first of all, a housing first approach works. Getting people into stable situations where they have a roof over their head dependably night after night is the single biggest thing that you can do for a homeless person to get their life stabilized. So I am for producing housing for homeless people and for working with all comers, including our Christian ministries who are doing projects out by the VA and on Brevard Road right now without any support from the city. I also think that we need to put more effort into preventing homelessness in the first place. And as a city council member, I would direct affordable housing funds to a eviction relief, emergency relief fund for people that have an emergency expense that puts them on the bubble. I think the best place to stop homelessness is at the point of eviction, and I would work to protect our renting residents who are a missed payment or an unexpected expense away from finding themselves on the street.
I believe that homelessness is more than not having a roof over your head, but it's the loss of your identity, your roots, and a sense of belonging. And this is a result of a combination of barriers, including mental health, legal restraints, substance abuse, and lack of education and skill. I believe that we fund local nonprofits right now and institutions that put forth strategies to address those barriers to end homelessness. And in that pursuit, they secure pretty big funding. But I'm for grassroots initiatives that are community-led, solutions that can support developing a true sense of belonging, self-love, and the restoration of self-identity. One thing around this topic that we also need to talk about is how we police homelessness, especially in our downtown area. Anytime you are policed and you repeatedly have to go in and out of through the judicial process, that amasses more economic responsibility. My time is up. I have more to say about it.
We all do. One of the programs I championed as president of the Downtown Association was the Spare Change for Real Change program. And that's the boxes you see throughout downtown where people can make contributions, and those are 100% granted to the homelessness agencies in our town. So I've worked with everyone from Western Carolina Rescue Ministries, the Salvation Army, Homeward Bound, and the thing is that Homeward Bound is doing some of the best work out there in our community by getting people into permanent housing first. By making them feel safe and supported by services, they have the opportunity to get out of homelessness. The thing is that all these organizations are working on the same problem, but they're not working together. And they're all competing for that charitable dollar. What we need to do is get them to work better together, to consolidate some resources so that we can address it. And part of that is going to be getting people into housing. Affordable housing is an issue across the board, and because affordable housing is so small right now, Homeward Bound doesn't have access to get people into permanent housing. Thank you.
From my perspective, one of the things in my background was I worked in government and state government for a couple of years, and what my job was to try and get government agencies to work together. And generally, they don't like doing that. And one of the things that with respect to homelessness, with respect to a lot of the issues, is a lot of the funding that we have relied upon is starting to be cut, whether that's from the state or that's from the federal level. So the need for us to deal with these issues, we're going to have to get more creative. And one of the areas that I think is very, very important is to have all levels of government, whether that's state, local, and county, as well as the nonprofit communities, think about new ways of working together and really attacking the issue. Don't think of it in terms of sort of your silos, but really look at what are the needs. Is it putting a roof over someone's head? Is it job training? Is it emergency funds to make sure you don't get evicted? We need to be really focusing, in my view, taking a comprehensive approach here. Like I said, at all levels of government and also with the nonprofit community.
During my 2 terms on council, we've made remarkable progress. Actually, long-term homelessness is way down in Asheville over these last several years. There is still, of course, a homeless issue going on. And most of homelessness is caused by 2 things. Health crises, which means we need universal single-payer health care, and a low minimum wage. That's why the city of Asheville is a living wage employer, and I encourage all businesses here to join the living wage campaign, and we certainly need a $15 minimum wage. As far as direct action here within the city, one of the things that I've worked on as chair of the Public Safety Committee is to convince the police not to arrest people for trespassing. Because when people just go to sleep somewhere because they have no place to sleep, we don't need to put them in jail and give them a record, which makes it harder to get a place to rent and harder to get a job. We need to get them to care. And so gradually we've moved the police force here to stop arresting people simply for trespassing.
For the last 15 years, I've spent the large part of my waking hours across the street from Homeward Bound. My office is located on Ann Street. So I am intimately familiar with the problem of homelessness and the traffic that's generated between the Salvation Army, Homeward Bound, Rescue Mission. This is a healthcare crisis. it's a lack of funding, like I said before, from the federal government to the state government, and it's really difficult for communities of our size to deal with this. But I think putting someone in a home is like, in many instances, is like putting someone in a wheelchair within the home, building the ramp, and then pulling the ramp away. There's a lot of support that's needed, and so we have to do a lot more than just simply finding homes. We have to find some more comprehensive support.
With regards to this getting homeless people off the streets, I believe I read something in the name, the association escapes my mind. It's an initiative. It's a program that's already has a detailed way of tracking individuals, and also the track their progress, including help with law enforcement. I just think we need more additional funding to help support that, to help these individuals, train them. I mean, the saying goes, give a man a fish, you'll feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you'll feed him for a lifetime. So we need to get behind these individuals and help them any way we can to, be self-sufficient, be able to, hold their head up high and be able to, claim that they're residents of Asheville.
So again, I'm the only person up here who works with a civic group that deals with encounters between, we're working with housing, not handcuffs, with the Reverend Amy Cantrell. And also we pull data for what we call Driving While Black with the Asheville Police Department. I'm chairman of the NAACP's initiative. So we're intimately involved with that. One of the things that I know that does work according to the data is rapid rehousing. Having done some research here and worked with several other organizations, there's a lot of nonprofits that bring folks here who are drug treatment and they wind up on the streets. So that does need to be pursued to see if something creative can't be done with that.
So I think this issue of homelessness is systemic. It isn't just a home. It's a lot of other issues. And our Homeless Initiative Advisory Commission, that is a joint effort between the city and the county, has a lot of partners on that commission that are looking at solutions that are systemic and community-based. And I'm very supportive of that and their work. I also sit on the Housing and Community Development Committee, where funding the homeless through the federal monies we get, we do definitely prioritize the homeless population, and the city also spends some money to help it out. There's never enough, but it's got to be a systemic response.
So I think most people that are experiencing homelessness are experiencing one or a combination of three things: economic hardship, mental health issues that have gone unaddressed for too long, and substance abuse issues. Economic hardship we can address at the city council level pretty easily with an emergency eviction fund that can help make sure that just because you got laid off from your job and your employer refuses to give you that last paycheck that they owe you, you can still keep a roof over your head for you and your kids. That's really important. As far as mental health goes, that's a big responsibility of the county to take care of. So we need to work with the county to make sure that when people have those kinds of issues, that they're being taken care of, that there's care for them there. And on policing issues, I mean, if you just look up the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds I did a records request on this, on panhandling in this city, that's a really good indicator that something's going on, that something's going wrong. And when you're criminalizing people who are panhandling, you're sending them into a deeper cycle of whatever the problem that got them there in the first place. It's not a caring way to deal with these people that are going through these issues. So, but it's going to take a real five-finger approach, coming together like a glove to work on this from all the different angles that it comes from. Not all of them are at the city level, but when they're at the city level, I'll tackle them.
Well, first, I agree that we need to continue to collaborate with our community partners and grassroots efforts and to keep people in their homes. An eviction fund sounds like a good idea to me. I want to echo Shanika Smith's answer on how this community is policed. I hear that from the courageous Amy Cantrell of Beloved House. But also as a person who relies on the bus, I know that transit is access to jobs, housing, groceries, education, and childcare. I've been advocating for fare-free transit as a member of the Transit Committee for over a year and a half. And this will not only have a positive environmental impact and an impact on traffic and parking, it provides access to families and students and elders and some of the most vulnerable people in our community.
All right, thank you guys so much. And with that, this concludes the City Council portion of our forum. We're going to take a short break, and then when we come back, we will hear from our mayoral candidates.
All right.
I want a selfie with you. We want to get you out.
Can we invite you and Rachel and any other student organizers to pose for the council candidates?
Also, feel free to grab food in the bag.